Let me pass it off to our lovely panel to answer your questions. Once we finish this, they'll give you instructions on how to gather your foils outside in the lobby. Thank you all for coming.
We'll figure it out. Hey everyone. So the way this is going to work is that we have a list of questions that we'll read if we need to read them. Otherwise, we want to get questions mainly from people in the audience, just to talk about regional stuff, to talk about just judge program stuff, pretty much anything you want. I don't think there's anything that's off limits. Sure. I can choose to. We can choose to not answer. And the number of hands that went up so fast when I said that.
And let's remember this is on the internet.
That's not fair. There's a lot of things on the internet, Chris Wonderbow.
Tell me more.
I should have said that. But before we get to any questions, first we should go through and introduce ourselves, because chances are you do know who we are, but just in case you don't, we'll go through. I'll start because I'm already talking. My name's Joe Hudo. I'm a level 3 from Western Mass. I'm a software developer in my day job. You might have figured that out given how much software stuff I do also in judging. Yeah, you're right. Good.
I'm Rob Stellan. I'm level 3 from Maine. I am not Joe Hudo. You can notice because my ears look normal.
You're right.
I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying Joe's an ugly person because I look a lot like him. My real job, I am an electronics calibration technician for the Department of the Navy. Also nerd. They are nuclear submarines.
Pretty sweet. My name is Bears. I'm from New York, previously from Connecticut, before that Indiana. I'm a software engineer as well. I work for a company called MakeSpace. In terms of the Judge program, I'm the lead developer for Judge Apps, and I'm currently overseeing the L2 advancement process here in the region. So those are some things I'd like to talk about. But like Joe said, we're really open books right now. We're excited to talk about pretty much anything. So,
Dylan.
After how long Paul has been, Sean has been the head of this region, it seems his stepping down was rather abrupt, at least for the people lower on the food chain. Why did he step down, and why was there no real feel that this was coming before?
That's interesting. I can field this because I know a lot about it. So it was abrupt in the way it was announced, I guess. I mean, I've been more involved with the back end of the process as well. So Sean's been RC since RC's, well, no, not since RC started. He sort of picked up the region after the previous regional coordinator decided that he was just done. Sean added himself to our region so he could become our regional coordinator. His initial plan, as he told me, was that I'll just do it until someone else shows up that could do it better. And then he got very comfortable in the role, and he did a very good job at it. And then from prodding from a few people like, I don't know, say me, I said, hey, why don't we start sharing some of these responsibilities? Why don't we talk about, do you have a transition plan? Like, how long do you plan on being RC? Like, that's a conversation that I had with Sean. So it's not that he, stepped down, suddenly just gave up. It's that his initial goal of being RC until other people could take it over had been met. And from conversations from myself and from some others, he decided that time was there. Yeah, there was a second part to your question, too.
Why wasn't it conveyed to the community that was in process?
That was in the works.
It's an awkward process, to be honest. There were a few, I know of at least 3 people that were interviewed for RC. It's weird at that point because this was before the new world order when RC was a role. So stuff was done slightly differently, where instead of having a group of people that all applied at once, we were interviewed serially. When I say we, anyways. But so we didn't know when that transition was coming. It could have been after the first candidate, could have been after the second candidate, could have been after the third candidate. And I won't say who was which candidate and in which order they came in. So it's also a little bit destabilizing to to talk about that change coming when we don't know what the final outcome is going to be. One outcome was that all these people got interviewed and they found out that none of us were better than Sean, and we could have stayed with Sean as RC, and that would have really damaged him. To be like, hey, I'm probably stepping down. We'll do some interviews, and then, oh, sorry, no, we're just kidding. We're going to stay here, RC. I never really considered how abrupt that was to people. Does everyone feel at least partially similar? That it seems sort of surprising. Oh,
I mean, I do.
yeah.
I talked to Sean a lot, so like I knew that he was saying that he was doing it until someone else would do it.
No, it's interesting.
Feeling that he was like had like one foot out the door, or like he had gotten complacent, was like if someone wants to take it over, but like it was never really fully conveyed in a way that like you were all kind of accepting of this fact. It was never fully established.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Jeff, what do you want to add?
So, kind of in addition to this, something I saw in another region, at GP Montreal, Gavin had announced that at the end of the year, he was going to be done as RC and somebody else would be appointed.
Yep.
We had known that months in advance before it came out. And I just feel like we didn't have the same kind of expectation here. It was just kind of the day of it happening. It pretty much went through. We didn't know, like, a big announcement at a previous GP or something, for example.
Well, yeah, I think with Gavin though, he wanted out. Like he had done what he had done his job, and he felt that he was finished. Whereas Sean wasn't sure if he was finished yet, and I think that's an important difference.
That makes sense.
Did you want to add something?
I mean, also, so Gavin Duggan was the Canadian RC, and he was living in Mountain View, California, Canada. So
that's what it says on Judge Apps.
Yeah, that was an extremely awkward situation as well. Whereas with Sean, we didn't have that geographic factor to consider. So, and I just wanted to pick up on something that Joe mentioned, because I think it is really important to hammer home how things are changing and have changed, but which is with the New World Order. Every 18 months, the RCs are going to go up for an application process, and they're going to be reviewed. And I was fortunate enough to be part of that committee and get some insight into how it works. And it's really great to have that basically democratic process so that everyone gets a fair shake and everyone gets to be considered. And also, it should provide some stability for everybody else in the region, because they know when that transition is likely to be occurring. So.
As far as I know, it's public knowledge who was up for renewal in the first wave.
Yep.
All right, more questions. That guy.
How successful was PEP feedback, and will it be returning?
God damn it, CJ. All right.
No questions for me.
So here's the thing.
I don't want to explain what pet feedback
All right.
was.
Okay. So PEP feedback was a brainchild of mine on a very long drive back from Columbus when I forgot to book a flight. And what there were a few sort of things that I wanted. The basic idea is that after an event, and these strictly aren't reviews, they're just like little nuggets of feedback that you would then give to a place, and that place would do something with it, collect them together. It allows you to track judges over time. We stopped doing that probably 4 months ago, something like that. I was one of the main drivers behind the project. Paul helped out quite a bit as well. I effectively ran out of time. That was one of the big things, is I got some information, and then I had the problem of not connecting up like what to do with it afterwards. I think in total we got about 200 pieces of PEP feedback. Nothing that had this long overarching structure that I was in this perfect idea that I had. And a lot of it I didn't feel was very actionable. So effectively I dropped it. That's what really happened. That doesn't mean that this sort of idea doesn't have some sort of merit. I think it is useful to sort of filter feedback through someone else. One of the things that I wanted to get, and it's sort of like a visceral thing, was that I know that. So say I think that you did a terrible job at an event. I might not want to tell you that, or it might take a lot of energy for me to put that into a way where I can deliver it to you where both of us are comfortable. So I was thinking that we could use this as a way where I could tell someone that you didn't do a fantastic job, and then that person would be responsible for joining it with other pieces of feedback to give you a larger picture of what was going on, to help you sort of move forward in your judge career. That sort of stuff, I believe there were 2 bits that weren't positive, effectively. A lot of it was, this person did a great job, which is nice, but not helpful for the thing that I was trying to do. One of the things that I've tried to build myself around is the idea that I'm a very honest person, and I like to be very forthcoming with people and rather direct. Not in a mean way, but sometimes it's mean. Weird. Yeah, it's a good way of saying that. But that, based on what I was getting, that never really quite happened. And then life stuff happens, and then that sort of just fell out the back. Like I said, I think it's an idea that does still have merit. So if there are people that are willing to help with this sort of thing, talk to me. We'll fire something up.
Follow-up question. Do you think it would be effective to filter that system through area leadership?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. This is the thing that we had talked about with the area reps. I mean, you asked because you were at that meeting. Initially, it was going to be Paul, myself, and Sean would be the main points of contact for disseminating this information. And then we talked with the area reps about having it go through them as well, which is a fantastic idea. But at that point, I had already sort of disconnected from it.
Okay.
Oh, God. Someone pick.
Let's go with Jason.
Okay, so
I'm going to write down the other names, by the way.
so I'm from Long Island. In Long Island, the last year and a half, we've doubled the number of judges and L2s, and the scores are increasing. Woo! And we're growing a lot as a region, as a area. How is the region doing by the numbers as a whole? Is that unique to us? Is the judge program just growing and we're a reflection of it?
All those numbers are what John is going to get tomorrow in Rotterdam.
But you have some basics, right? I presume you have basic numbers?
Not over time.
Okay.
John live stream that.
Yeah.
The idea of live streaming the RC conference is one of the most amazing things I've considered today.
And just a quick question. Could those in the back hear the question? Or are we going to need to... Okay, great. The next hand I saw was Russell.
What was the response to the L2T requirements being posted? How many questions have been received? And do we have any L2Ts yet?
Yeah, I'll grab that. I received about a half dozen people express interest to me becoming L2Ts. One of the elements of the action plan that I delivered to John Oliver about how we're going to implement L2T in the region is to put that list together and to reach out to them to remind them, hey, we have this self-nomination form, the self-nomination process for L2T, encourage them to nominate themselves, answer any questions they might have, that sort of thing. I also obviously want to reach out to the other level 3s and get that list from them as well, because I think some people reach out to them too. For the second half of your question, we currently have no L2Ts. Other regions right now have 2 or 3, some of them. Some regions still have none. I definitely think that we're behind the ball. I'm excited to do interviews, get that going. There's a lot of infrastructure being built up behind the scenes so that people have access to the same L2 welcome wagon resources, basically, as well as the actual list of L2 candidates. So those things are basically in flight and will be landing really soon. Also, I'll take this opportunity to pitch. If you're interested in becoming a level 2 tester, please go look at the nomination form in the Northeast Facebook group. It's going to walk you through all the requirements, and you will get a response back from one of the L3s in the region within a week. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Matt was up too. Matt had a question.
Yeah, Matt Cooper?
Yeah. This is just your guys' your own personal opinion on this. What do you think is the single biggest issue that's facing the region right now?
Why don't you start? You've not talked. Go ahead.
I think it's more than just the region. The program itself is opportunities at lower level competitive events is what we've all seen. Trying to get onto PPTQs without having any experience can be difficult. 5 or 6 years ago when I was first getting experience in competitive, it was 200, 300 player PTQs with a 7-person staff. You can have a crappy L1 or inexperienced L1 that you're trying out, and they're not going to burn your event down. Whereas now we have TOs who have 32-player events, and we're trying to work on justifying, hey, you should have an L1 on your staff in addition to the L2 to get them experience. And this is getting slightly worse because Star City doesn't like coming here during the winter for some reason. 'Cause, you know.
After they had to cancel one, I think that they're
Yeah. So trying to find opportunities in region for judges to gain experience at competitive REL so that they can then go and apply to larger events is, I think it's a program-wide issue. We're hit a little bit harder by it because winter, and we're not having the open series like the Mid-Atlantic and the Southeast is having.
I think the big challenge for the region is really embodying our leadership principles. The judge program has no clear overarching leader. We have the program coordinators. They are fairly hands-off, and I expect that many of us won't see them on a regular basis, which is fine. Some people want more active hands-on leadership, some people don't. And that's a really big challenge for the judge program. In the same way, our region experiences a microcosm of that, where we have John, who is very clearly the leader and coordinator, quite aptly, of our region, but we also want to support a lot of other cool initiatives without having them all be from the top down. And that can be very challenging because from the top down we have a lot of fun, cool ideas, but also there's a lot of fun, cool ideas from the bottom up. And getting to a place where we can meet in the middle and encourage that bottom-up leadership without being too autocratic is really quite a challenge. This is something that I think is a fundamental challenge of leadership. We kind of want to have it both ways. We want people to be take their own initiative, but we also want to have a structure for them to fit into. And that process of creating a structure can be restrictive and squelch creativity. So I think that's a really hard problem. I think the area reps, area captains are a great step in between, where it's someone you can talk to and do something on a more local level, and hopefully those great ideas can go spread throughout the region. I think we've seen that with PTQ planning and also with the mini meetups across different areas, which are now really basically everywhere in the region, but it's a challenge. So if you're interested in that, please step up, stand up, and do things.
I'm going to go with a similar thing that Rob went to, is that there are sort of fewer events given the number of judges that we have. We live in an interesting region where it's very, very dense in some parts. Other parts, not so much. But out here, like New York City, Boston area, tons of judges, not nearly as many events. That makes each event sort of worth more. And I think it puts a lot of pressure on people. And at least when I was coming up, I tried to maximize every single event that I had, trying to get the most that I could out of every event, and it was a very stressful thing for me. I can't imagine what it would be like for me going up through the judge program now, because it seems like it would be even worse. Because as Rob was saying, we don't have the PTQ system anymore. We have these smaller events where you might get a second judge on staff, but there might be a lot of competition for that. One thing that I think that we need to work on is, thankfully, one of the topics of this conference is failure and how to deal with that. I think that's a great way for people to actually grow, and I'm not sure that that's being used as well as it could be, but that's a thing that I think we can all work on going forward, hopefully from things that we learned from this conference and other discussions. Cool. Yeah.
As a relatively new TO, in Boston, I find that it's very difficult to find space at an affordable rate.
Yep.
In that, that it's a huge hindrance. I would love to run as many GPQs, GPTs, as many competitive events as I possibly could. I find myself barely being able to do one every 3 months because of the cost being prohibitive and finding a place. I wouldn't mind seeing I don't know if this is a judge program initiative, but some type of a rate cut or some type of thing from Wizards saying, oh, we can give you some help finding places to run things. I don't know. It just seems it's a very huge challenge as a tournament organizer in a more urban setting. where, places like New York, Boston, I'm sure San Francisco, Austin, Texas probably as well, where like space is at a huge, it's a huge commodity.
Right.
And finding and being able to run a profitable event is really hard.
So there's two things there that I'd like to comment on. The first one's simple, and like the help from WotC thing.
Is that not? It was one of these like shopping that like.
No, it'd be fantastic. I agree, but it doesn't fit. So that's not a thing that I would rely on. Another important thing, though, is that like even if you had infinite space and everything was free, I don't think your events would still be all that large just from the way that stuff is structured right now. From what I've seen a lot from players is that they really have to have a reason to go to an event. How many of you went to Eternal Weekend? Okay, this is going to be fun. So put your hands up if you were there on Friday. Okay, how about Saturday? And Sunday? Some of you are lying. No. So
It was a good event.
no, it was a fantastic event. It's my favorite weekend of the year. But the thing is that Friday was big because it was Vintage Champs, or 300 something players, which is fantastic for Friday, especially Vintage. Saturday was huge. Saturday we had 600 something players. Sunday was sad to see as a judge. Because there was a big event. There was a large Eternal Masters sealed, which Nick thought people would love, and not a lot of people showed up for it. Frankly, I think the people that didn't show up for it were wrong, because it was a fantastic event. But there wasn't a thing to chase, and I think that like chasing the PT, I think that was a big draw. When we had a few PTQs, they always had a huge draw. Now they've spread it out, so I think more people are playing, but it's going to be fewer people at a large event, which puts more pressure on TOs, of course.
Yeah.
But I think it's not just the space. Even if you had the space, I don't think you would have the players. Even in Boston, even in a big city. If you were to run a PPTQ every month?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I have different formats, too, but yes.
Yeah. No, so there's a few concerns here. That was my entire point. Yeah.
One of the things you could do is reach out to other TOs in your area that might be willing to work with you on coming together with a larger event in one location or multiple events in one spot.
Yeah, that's neat.
They're fantastic.
Yeah, Riva.
Thank you.
Also, kind of along these lines, as far as you guys are aware of this, what are the merits that are being observed from us running the PPTQ structure and RPTQ structure against the PTQ structure? From what I'm seeing, judges are having trouble. Players see this as almost an extra obstacle. So what are the benefits that we're seeing from this changeover? Obviously, there are some, but as L3s who get to observe and get feedback from a number of different judges, I'd like to hear what you've heard back from that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing that we have control over, so I don't worry about it. Hey, the structure is dictated by WotC.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we adapt the judge program to best handle what WotC tells us they're going to run tournaments. So,
Yeah.
however WotC wants to do it, like, WotC changed standard, and we're like, that's dumb. And 2 years later, like, yep, you're right. So,
Yeah. So to pick up on that, one thing that I think is very important to realize is who Wizards' customers are. Wizards' customers are store owners and tournament organizers. They aren't the players directly. And when you think about it, if you concentrate power, if you concentrate PTQs in the hands of a couple TOs, that leads to a lot of competition amongst the TOs, which might be a good thing. But if you instead split up that pie and give a piece of it to every TO who can reach that status and who is able to do a PPTQ, I think Wizards perceives that to be a better business model and a kind of fairer way. Additionally, there's the fact that now instead of players traveling an hour or 2 hours to go to a PTQ in the middle of wherever, they can just qualify for the regional PTQ in the comfort of their own store, of their own city. So that's also a perceived benefit. And then, as Rob said, the judge program adapts around that. And it is very isolating to be the single judge on these PPTQs. I heard an idea from Long Island recently that I really liked, and I don't want to steal the thunder, but there was a suggestion that was of judges playing in another head judge's PPTQ, giving feedback, giving support, so that even if there's only one judge on staff, you still have another judge there to interact with and to see you and to give you feedback, which I think is a really cool idea and something that I think as a region we could definitely do. I've seen Sean's hand up for a long time.
He's had his hand up forever.
Okay.
Sorry, Sean. So, for people who were at the Amherst conference, a discussion was brought up about the distribution of judges between 1, 2, and 3, and how it was hard for L1s to get the experience to the next step for L2s. So I believe it's been a couple of months now, and my question is, do you think we have potentially found a solution to combat the distribution from being such a large stretched out region to help accommodate those judges we want to move forward?
So just to sum up your question so I understand it. So at the Amherst conference, there was a discussion about how clear the path forward is for an L1, given the way that a region is structured. And your question is, has that changed since then? I don't know.
L2 tester helps with that.
Yeah, we'll say that.
One thing that will help going forward that, as Paul said earlier, it's in the air, hasn't landed yet, is the L2 tester. Once we have a few more judges in the region who are capable of creating L2s, that'll help L1, instead of being like, oh, I got to go to Rob all the way over in Maine, then that'll help. Like, we have a pretty big stretches of area in the region that just don't have a 3 in them. They don't really need a 3, but throwing an L2 tester up in Rochester, New York or something like that might be helpful. So L1s aren't like, oh, I got to travel down to, actually probably up to Canada. Canada's probably your closest L3, right?
Point, because that actually happened recently. We had a PPTQ that was going to be canceled in Rochester because I was out of town that weekend, and the only other person was an L1 who was ready for L2 but could not otherwise test. So he actually saw Sean Hunt, met him past the Canadian border, got tested the day before the PPTQ.
Hello, Sean Hunt.
And then judged the PPTQ.
I remember
That person would be here today, except he's head judging a PPTQ. He's a gem. He's a great person, and he's done a lot with the area. What's his name? Mike Bauman. Mike Bauman. Got it. Cool. Yeah. Sorry, name drop Rochester.
Sometimes the RC will ask for feedback from L3s for GPs and opens and stuff. It's a thing that John has kept up doing. Around the time of the Amherst conference, I can think of some areas that I thought were a little underserved. I can't think of quite as many now, so I think it is getting better. But I'm also not an L1 trying to make L2.
Yeah.
So I think that's an important difference in perspective. There, let's go.
Sean?
Sean, yeah.
So I have 2 quick questions. My first one is, have we thought about doing, having the stores actually like force a variety of GPTs with L1 judges? I know it's an issue in Connecticut where every store uses the same L1 for every single GPT. Is there a way that we can say, like, you must switch between these? Like, you can't have the same person do every single event.
We can't tell stores what to do.
I'm not sure if there's like any way that we can put like a...
I mean, so as someone in your area, you can talk to them and encourage them to rotate and talk about the benefits, which is that you get a variety of judges. So if like the one person is unavailable on a certain day, you're more familiar with the store and you can more easily jump in and back it up. Like you can try to convince them of why it's a good idea to do rotations, but we can't force them to do that, nor do I think we should.
Your area rep can also help you with things like this.
Yeah. What was your second question?
So the last time I asked this, it was kind of like, eventually, when we get enough people, are we going to get name badges eventually? Can I pay for that? Or
So let me explain how name badges work. They're magical. So what happens is the way they currently work is that WotC decides to do a print run and asks all the RCs for a list of people that should get a name badge. Level 2s are automatically added to this list, like WotC has that. That's how I don't know if some of you might be new L2s and somehow you have 2. That's how. Is because, you got added to a list automatically, and then the RC added you to the list as well. Then they get printed, then they get shipped to us, and we have binders full of name tags. The time between those printings is unknown. Sometimes it's like 8 months. I have a feeling now might be closer to roughly forever. It's a thing that I'm looking into related to swag stuff. Here's a fun question. If you could order name badges today, who would order a name badge? Okay. Cool. So I should look into that harder is what you're all saying.
In Detroit, they do their own name badges for you.
Oh no, I want to do them better though.
More web forms?
Yes. Yeah. Well, our name badges will come with embedded web forms. It'll be fantastic.
The feedback QR code right on the name badge.
Yeah, you can just scan it.
Megan, what's your question?
Feedback.
Sure. I'll start by saying that I hate the idea of being at the top of the food chain. Sorry, so the question was, with the onset of the L2 tester role, and implicitly the definition and responsibility of each level being important to have more clear than ever before, what are our impressions of each level, right? And I start off by saying, well, I really don't like the idea that we're at the top of the food chain. This is not our program, it is your program. And that's something to be very important. This is not meant to be a hierarchy, this is meant to be a community.
More in the sense that you are the people who can test people at it.
Sure. No, it's okay, thank you. At least for me, when I'm looking for level 1, it's someone who's excited about Magic, who can give good rulings, who can run a solo event at regular rel. And as a bonus, will ideally be able to go out and find extra resources on their own when they need them, which is very important. And L2 is very similar, but replace doing a solo event at regular with doing a PPTQ at competitive. That is really the ultimate test. That is kind of what the L2 exam and interview is designed to analyze. Can you run a PPTQ by yourself without supervision from your first days being in L2? And then L3 gets a lot fuzzier, but it's head judging big events, coordinating large projects, being kind of involved in the region as a whole. So that's my quick and dirty answer of the 3 levels.
I might as well throw my opinion in because I can. It used to be that, I don't think it is anymore, that L1s were called local judges, L2s were called area judges, and L3s were called regional judges.
Yeah.
I think now it's like Premier or some weird...
Yeah.
It's in-store, competitive, and...
Premier.
Yeah.
I don't know what I am.
We don't know that. I still like the old names for that because I think it's a good descriptor of at least the sort of stuff that I'm looking for. When someone approaches me about testing for L1, first what I do is I send them to the other L2s in the area and say, hey, you should test this person for L1. But it is, yeah. The sort of litmus test that I have is, can I put this person in a store, have them be a judge, and have it help grow the store? Can it help grow their F&M? Are they, as Paul said, are they excited about Magic? Upbeat isn't necessary. If you're familiar with me, upbeat isn't my forte. But it's helpful, but not, like I said, not necessary. For level 2, I just expand the scope a bit. I try to think about what's the outcome of this person being an area leader. One question that I ask new L2s that I've just advanced is who do you have sort of waiting in the wings that you're going to test for L1? Who's part of your crew that's going to come up? I think that's an important thing to do, is because as a level 2, yes, you're running PPTQs, and honestly, that's the most important thing you're doing as far as WotC is concerned, is running PPTQs. But from more of a judge programming perspective, I want to see that sort of area leadership, not being like the figurehead at the top of it, but just being able to work between stores and work within everyone. And then for level 3, it's the same sort of thing, it's even wider, but on a regional scale. Do you want to add anything?
No, it's more of the same.
Cool.
Except I like the new names.
Yeah.
I think the new names accurately say what each rank of the
Oh no,
judge is.
they totally do.
Like,
But it doesn't fit with my idea of the scope.
It's because you're bad at change.
Yeah, I know. I've been around forever. I've not.
Tom?
Yeah. So talking about how the core levels are defined, 1, 2, and 3, I know from the self-nomination form for L2T that there is a baseline expectation for what you want to see in a self-nomination.
Yeah.
Is there kind of, I guess, similar to an interview you give to an L2? Are there things you're looking for in L2 to have right off the bat that aren't just those hardline requirements? Like, is there anything that somebody in the room who might be considering L2T should know that's not on that form?
Everything you need to know about the L2T process is in the blog post that Sean Cadenese posted on behalf of the L2 tester certification group. I realize I'm not trying to be a dodge. I'm trying to say that is the complete and authoritative source of what an L2T is supposed to be. We as judges are very susceptible to, you could call it level creep. We raise the bar higher as we encounter more people because we want to. It's not out of malice or anything, but we kind of want everyone to be better, and that is very dangerous because that means that in 2016 and 2017 the standards are very different, and that's not the same. As a program, we're trying to keep everything consistent.
I mean, to piggyback on that, this is a large reason why you've taken L2 testing, is to provide that consistency across the region and across time, too.
Yeah. So, what's up, Rusty?
Yeah, I just had a question. So this morning John was saying that every certain amount of time there'll be like a sort of, retest to make sure that, level 2s keep their level. Is that also for level 1s?
I don't believe so. I don't even know what the maintenance requirements are. What are the maintenance requirements for L1?
L1 renewal is judge an event every 6 months, I believe. And
that's correct. It changed from 12 to 6.
Yeah. And that gets taken care of.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's no testing, there's no review requirement.
Yeah.
Robert.
Yeah.
I don't know names. I know.
Yeah, Robert.
2 questions. One, what was the significant reasoning behind removing the rules advisor? I always felt that was a really good starting point for people that want to be the rules guru for like their EDH group or their casual group that may play in a store and may elevate their rules knowledge to a certain point but not want to judge like at the level 1 event, level 1s per se. And then I'll touch on my next question after that.
I can handle that if you want.
Yeah, sure, go for it.
The Rules Advisor was sort of this thing that was tangential to the entire judge program, and it sort of stopped making sense at a certain point. I get it with like the effectively having a badge saying I know rules stuff, I'm the rules guy, and I think that's valuable. But what was happening was that people were using it in a very inconsistent way. I'd heard of plenty of 2s that required or strongly encouraged people to get their RA before they would test them for L1. And that was part of that was a little built into Judge Center. You couldn't generate a level 1 practice exam without being a rules advisor. I mean, L2 could generate one for you. But it sort of stopped fitting just within the judge program itself. Because remember that L1s, under the new definition from some number of years ago, was that they would be your local judges. So this RA became sort of redundant. And just the expectations were never clear as to what it was.
Yeah.
My second question is about the exemplar program. How do you feel it is progressing and room for improvement? Do you think there is a way for judges that don't necessarily get out to competitive RL events to be able to be noticed easier?
You looking up data?
Yeah.
Yep. So Paul and I both reach for our phone for the same time, for the same thing too.
Yeah.
So
do you
start
want a
talking
few
while I
minutes
find.
to...
Yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll talk about how I think the exemplar program is going. And I have actually very conflicted thoughts about the exemplar program. I have been fortunate to be nominated in the exemplar program since it was started. And yet, the things I'm nominated for don't always coincide with the things that I find to be truly valuable. And that might be taboo or weird to say, but it's also how I feel, and I want it to be honest as possible. So that's one thing that I think is quite challenging in the exemplar program, which is that people do things that they think are exemplary and don't get nominations for, and people do things that they think are exemplary, but they don't get nominations for. And some people exist in both categories, some in one or the other, some in neither. And really, I think exemplar has to be seen as secondary to your own sense of self-worth and your own sense of what is valuable. I know what I'm proudest of, and it's great when other people agree with that and recognize me for it. It makes me feel good, makes me feel strong. But sometimes that doesn't happen, and that's okay. I look within myself and say, this is still important, even if no one saw me do it. So,
this is what you're looking for.
Yeah. Do you want to take that up?
Sure. So we have a project called Exemplar Metrics, which there's a bunch of us on it. Paul and I are both on it. Dan Collins is also on it. He's out there. The goal from the inception of the Exemplar program was to look at stuff and see if anything weird was happening. One thing that one of the members, whose name is Chris Langston, did in about a few weeks ago, he looked at the Wave 5 data export. He went through every single nomination by hand and put them into 4 different categories: either mentorship, community, local event, or GP/PT event. The idea was we wanted to see where all of this stuff was coming from, to see, is this all competitive RE element or what it is. It turns out that the numbers are as follows. 18% of nominations were for mentorship, 45% were community, 17% were local event, and 20% were GPs or PTs. I think that this paints a slightly different picture than the one that a lot of us were expecting. I know that it seems there are lots of detractors, I guess, from the exemplar program, at least on the internet, where people can say terrible things. And one of the frequent things that comes up is I never get exemplar X because I never go to events, or I never go to big events, I never travel to events. And I think that what these data show is that's not necessarily what's actually happening. We being 2+, are doing a good job in trying to recognize a wide variety of different things. I understand that you're more visible if you're at bigger events. So if you go to a lot of events, you might get something that would fall under the community section, as Chris defined it. But you became visible because you went to events, so I agree that is a problem. But I don't think it's as dire as some seem to think. I'm not saying that you think that way. But.
Does that data correlate back to Wave 1?
No, this was just the one.
So that he hasn't backtracked to see how it all looks and how it evolved?
Part of doing this was to get a base data set. One thing that Dan was looking into doing was using fancy neural network nonsense and using this as a seed. To help build that and do that going forward to try to automate all this process. I think one of the main reasons the metrics group started was this Circle of Bros thing, right?
Yeah.
Was we wanted to make sure that there weren't like a ring of judges that would then push XP Rex around once every wave. So that was a thing that we needed more data for. So while we were waiting to get more data on that sort of stuff, because you need lots and lots of data in order to really define these clusters well, we looked into stuff like this. Thankfully, these sort of reciprocal nominations are relatively rare and are also being handled, which I think is good. And it seems that as a program, we've understood the exemplar program a little better as we've gone from wave to wave. But I don't know if that helps at all.
It actually helps a lot.
Okay.
Amanda had a.
When you, I don't know if you know how what the definition of like community. You mean as in like judge projects, running like a rules Tumblr, like those like judge conference type stuff. Is that what you meant by community?
That's what I'm trying
Community
to
sounds
see.
redundant. Like out of context, community sounds redundant to local.
So the last two categories were anything that is event related.
Local event
And-
versus community.
Yeah, and Chris was very strict about stuff being event related because he to inflate the number as high as possible. And even when inflating the number, it was only you got those 17 and 20% numbers for each local and GP category.
Yeah, no, it's because the largest category ended up being community.
Exactly.
I just wanted to know what that meant.
Yep.
From what I understand, it was generally just like helping out judges in the area.
Okay. Ashley's been waiting very patiently.
Yes.
So you and John much earlier both mentioned meetups, and I'm very much looking forward to the New Jersey one. I hope to see a lot of you there. Make a drive, I'll wait. John also mentioned that there's, I can't remember the exact phrasing, increased emphasis or support for local meetups.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if you had any more insight on that.
I think we should wait for John to talk about that. Do you?
Nah.
Okay.
So no.
Okay.
No, we can say so. Well, I don't know if I should tell you. Anyways, here we go. So let me explain how conferences worked from my understanding. Once again, I'm not the RC. I never saw any of these official things, so I could just be making shit up. Who knows? When
you had L3 panels right now?
Yeah, 100%.
Just make sure.
The way that it used to work was you would have a big conference. You would tell somebody at WotC how many people you had, and then they would send you packets or sets of 50. So if you had 100 attendees, you get 100. If you had 80 attendees, you get 100. And then you keep those 20 for the next one. And you just do it that way.
Have 101 attendees, you have 49 left over.
Yeah. Well, no, but the idea is they know how many you used, and then you could use that for the next one. What they wanted to do was change it to be, this is the way that it was explained to me, but I'm not sure if this was actually going to happen, was it's going to be a per person or per judge allocation. So at the beginning of the year, John's going to get a big fat envelope, probably a box, full of however many judges we have, that many packets. And then we can do effectively whatever we want with those within certain confines. So not whatever we want. But part of this thing is that there are some large regions, and especially in Europe, there are some multi-country regions which make travel difficult. Languages are also a problem. We tried to handle that a bit by having the German-speaking region, but it doesn't always work well. So what's going to happen is we're going to have some number of mini conferences, and then you'll get some allocation based on that. And that's basically it.
Has there been for the region, leadership emphasis on having local meetups and as well as these mini conferences?
So the meetups thing is a little independent of the conferences. That's something that our area reps have just sort of taken upon themselves. One nice thing about this region is that we are very close to each other, sort of, except for, I'm sorry, Pennsylvania and New York. You western sides of that state are far from things. But there's a lot of good community stuff that can be done. One of the large reasons we have all this swag stuff is because I think it's really helpful to start to build an identity for a region, to sort of come together as a group, especially when you have this many people that come to a thing. We can recreate some of this on a more local scale and then just sort of build from there. How many people were in the main judge's photo just now?
What? Oh yeah, me.
Crap.
No,
Yeah.
Maine. Like the state.
That didn't work out like I wanted it to. So my point is that there's this identity of being a main judge when there's like the state with an E.
Should I talk about this?
Yeah.
I started in 2010. I was the second judge in the state. In 2011, I became the first L2 the state had ever had. And now, raise your hand if you're a judge from Maine. And we have the state, yeah. And we have 4 or 5 more that aren't here. So, we have, it's not just Western New York and Western PA. Like, the middle of Maine where like Megan lives, like I don't even know where she lives.
Lewiston is like an hour from you.
I thought you lived in Bangor, whatever. So don't do that.
But where I was going with that is that this was sort of a natural thing that arose where groups wanted to get together to try to build stuff. A lot of the reps looked at some other areas and to see how they grow, and this sort of natural growth of getting people together and getting people excited about judging is really helpful. It's convenient that this meetup thing might sort of butt up with mini conferences, but exactly how that will happen is unknown. I don't know.
Sure. On that note, what do we do well as a region? Like, what sorts of stuff do you see from your regional perspective that we're actually really cool about, in addition to Google Forms?
Swag.
Hashtag swag.
Do you want to start?
Would you like me to?
Are we
Sure. It's just Google Forms. Yeah, that's it. Next question.
I think the Northeast has a good reputation in the program. Reputations kind of attach to regions, and I feel that in general the Northeast has a good one. We're often seen as having a really good focus on events, but also doing a lot of community stuff really well. We were one of the earlier adopters of some cool things like Slack and the area representative / area captain system. Joe originated the welcome wagon for L1s, which has cropped up in several regions also by now. Like, if you look at the ideas that have spread through the United States and sometimes even the world, many of them have come from the Northeast, and that's a testament to the quality of our judges and the fact that we have a lot of support and a lot of cool ideas.
Yeah, I guess just to piggyback on what Paul was saying is, we've been very good about trying to be original about ways to solve problems. I'm biased because I live here, but I feel like we maybe approach problems in slightly different ways, and try, because of our proximity to each other, we can work together. Yeah, I know. There's good stuff. Josh.
In regards to swag, I think it's been about 12 months since we did the last edition of the shirt. Is that like what we should expect for like a rotating period? Is that, you know, come winter, it should be just like the Christmas times or the holiday times of swag, or?
It's whenever Joe stops being lazy and decides to do something.
I will.
Is the statement true?
No. So.
Should we expect this like on an annual basis, or?
It's sort of whenever stuff comes. It's not. He's not wrong. It's when stuff becomes convenient at a point, and when I feel like it's most well used. We could have easily done an order immediately after our first one. There would have been plenty of people who did it. Mm-hmm. How many people here heard of swag at the conference?
At this conference today?
At this conference today. Oh, okay. That was many fewer than I was expecting. What happened last time was a bunch of people found out about it, too late, and they wanted stuff, and I told them they had to wait. I was hoping that having new stuff every time would be helpful, but I mean, if this is a thing that people want to do every year, we can. Like I said, I think swag is very important. Yeah, we're gonna get name badges. I get it. I'll do it. I think that, like I said, building this regional identity is really important. I mean, there are lots of people in here that have our region outline on their arm. I think that's a pretty big deal, and I like sort of what's happening with that. No, not the judge thing.
What about judge things on your arm?
What's up, Eli?
Yeah. While we're on the subject of shape of the region and size of the region, I know that they recently split up some of the larger regions. Are we anywhere near that point?
I've not heard anything about that. I don't know if you have either. I don't know. It sort of depends on the region too. The Midwest was different than the Northeast. Yeah. We have a different sort of structure than they do. I mean, they had area captains, we have area reps, whatever. But we have, these denser population areas. They're more spread out. It makes it harder for them to build a regional identity. I think part of the power of all being so close to each other is that we can do that, and it makes that less necessary. But there could be an email in a week, and we'll find out.
We get 5 minutes left, so time for like 2 more questions.
Sure, this is great.
So that guy, and then that guy.
We spoke a lot today about, for example, the availability of events to judge and experience the game and these types of things and how it changes. Do you guys, as region coordinators, have a goal of, like, let's say, a ratio distribution between the amount of ideal level 2s and level 1s that should exist? So, for example, as we gain more judges, is there a certain ratio of that population to the
It's a good question.
Yeah, as the L2 person.
Yeah.
Figured it was.
So there's a couple answers. John said something during his opening talk that I thought was very powerful and is going to be a guiding light for me moving forward, which is that he wants to help everyone reach the level that they deserve to be at, that they ought to be at. And on the one hand, being part of events is, in some sense, a limited resource. But at the same time, the Judge program is about growth and is about creating opportunities and helping people get to that level, get to level 2. So on the one hand, I don't think that there should be any kind of cap on number of level 2s. At the same time, as a globe, I believe we're somewhere in the ballpark of 10, 15%. If I had a computer, I could check on Judge apps. Sorry? 10% of the program is level 2. And if our region is well below that, that's going to be a problem. If we're well above that, maybe that means we're fantastic. Maybe that means it's time to be like, are you guys having trouble finding opportunities to judge and actually use your L2 muscles? I've never had people come to me and it's pretty rare if people say, I feel like I'm being crowded out by other judges.
Figure the sparsity of certain larger events, maybe you might want to adjust the ratio, make it so you have more level 1s and level 2s, too many or something.
So was there a question?
It was just a statement, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
The way that the Judge program has been working for the past probably 4 or 5 years now is we've been in acquisition mode. It's slowed a bit, and that's the way that I believe you've been prioritizing, like L2s in particular, is that if an area needs an L2, we might push a little harder to get an L2 there. But if someone comes up and says, hey, I want to be L2, you won't say, no, you have too much already.
Yeah.
One thing that I sort of wanted to mention, that I think the Judge program is weird and important in certain ways, where we always focus on improving from event to event, and the way that a lot of us do that is actually by improving, as people. We're better at dealing with failure, we're better at dealing with others, and we're better at, getting, our point across. I've been lucky in that I've been able to move through the Judge program relatively quickly. It's also helped me a lot in, my work life. I now find myself in more management positions, largely due to going to events and people telling me that I fucked something up, and me having to deal with that. Not just the fact that I messed it up, but also me listening to them tell me that, hey, you did this wrong. And some people weren't nice about it, and shouldn't have told me, in those ways. But I had to learn, as a human, how to actually get better about doing that. This was a thing that Paul touched upon in his keynote, is that, there's, I don't know, the Judge program is real life to a certain point. Yes, it's all a game. We're watching Magic. It's a game that was designed maybe for children, maybe for mid-20-year-olds, who knows. We all know tons and tons of grinders. But I think that the Judge program holds this sort of unique space where we can improve, as humans, that I've not come across anywhere else in my life, and I've been involved with other groups of various things, but usually it's just for fun. And this is for fun too, but like I said, it's helped me. Yeah. And the reason that I bring that up is because I never want to see a point when someone isn't allowed to get to a certain level because it's too busy. Because now they're gonna miss out on these opportunities on how to better deal with failure, or how to better deal with someone else that you might disagree with. I think it's an important thing that I would, yeah, I would hate to see that sort of thing go away.
So you spoke a lot about how important it is for L1s gaining experience to judge competitive events. You also mentioned that there is a shortage of competitive events. That's not really something that we can work around. What other things can L1s do to improve their chops while they're waiting and trying to get to these events?
I don't know if you've heard of judge conferences, but they're pretty helpful. No, but really. Yeah. The meetups are also fantastic things. If they're not happening in your area, one really cool feature of the judge program is you can just do it. I'm pushy, let's say that, with certain things. I'll come up with ideas and I'll just, do them, and it's been helpful. Paul mentioned the welcome wagon thing. This was an idea that I had that I thought would be very helpful, so I told Sean I was doing it. I didn't ask Sean to do it. Thankfully, Sean's nice and let me do it. But if you're in an area where you feel like this sort of community should be built, then start. It doesn't matter what level you are. It doesn't matter if you have a level. That's helpful. Getting into the sort of judge mindset, talking about rulings and stuff with judges. One thing that always happens at judge conferences and meetups is there's always a conversation. They're like, all right, so player A has this. There's always that conversation. So this stuff does come up at those sorts of things. Another thing you can do is convince your local TOs. I hear that you in particular have a very fantastic local TO who helps a lot with staffing lots of level ones at their events. Trying to get on either a PPTQ. One thing that Paul mentioned I think is that's actually a really good idea is that you have an L2 that's head judging the PPTQ. You can have an L2 playing, or you can have an L1 playing, or anyone really. You can sort of work together after the event to talk about stuff like that. I don't know, do you have other things?
I was just...
Hold on. I want to plug Mystical Tutor, so do that. I almost forgot. Mystical Tutor is this online thing, has little lessons you should go watch. That's how you should get better at judging.
Who's it run by?
The internet.
Yeah. I was actually going to mention online resources as well. I am I'm kind of blanking on the word, but I learn by reading and by absorbing knowledge and consuming knowledge. So that's been incredibly helpful for me. There's a ton of judge articles out there, so there's some really great blogs. Ricky's, The Feedback Loop, Nick Zatomer's The Elvish Farmer, many others that you can find on judge apps, and just through Google, basically, by searching for judge articles from the days of yore. So those are great things to read and consume. And also, if you want, we have, obviously, the rules. We have the Slack for our region, which is fantastic. There's also the Judge IRC, if you like old school chats as well, where you can hang out and absorb a lot of knowledge.
Believe that's it for our question time.
Yeah.
Woo! So, thanks.
All right.